Trevor's up there rocking the factory Yamaha 250.
One of Trevor's huge tricks, or his biggest trick, is the sterilizer, landing with the feet over the handlebars. I think he's going to be looking possibly for a combo. Yeah! Trevor Vines! Big air was won last year by Kenny Barcher doing a Shaolin to a sterilizer. Trevor Vines comes with something completely new.
I am back again with another guest, a moto freestyle legend who has spent some time in the motocross world, of course, a guy who helped lay the foundation of freestyle motocross, one of the early guys who put it down and traveled and did his thing with a lot of the other guys who put it down as well during that time period. Let's give it up for Trevor Vines. What's going on, Trevor? How you doing today, my man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Pleasure having you, man. Like I was mentioning to you, I got you on the show. You are a request, and I'm glad I got you on the show because I've never had a true freestyle guy rider on the show, and it's a pleasure having you.
Yeah, thanks.
You started off as a racer, and like most guys, most of the freestyle riders do, they start off as racers. They kind of transition into something else, or whatever the case may be. You started off as a racer. What was it like for you racing out of Ohio and as an amateur, and when you turned pro, prior to even considering freestyle?
I mean, Ohio is actually kind of a good area for motocross. The winter sucks, and to spend 5 or 6 months off your bike, or maybe you ride a little bit and it's muddy and cold and still not good riding. That, I think, definitely doesn't help. But there's a lot of fast kids that came out of Ohio, so we did have that on the weekends. When you go to the races, there were fast guys there that you could see how they were doing it and try to do that.
And your career, you kind of walked through the ranks, and then you ended up eventually turning pro, which led into your freestyle career. What point did you know that you wanted to transfer into freestyle, and how was that scene, stepping onto that scene for you for the first time?
That sounds a little better than it probably went. I tried racing. I wasn't really that fast.
Okay.
In the grand scheme of being fast, So, and I got hurt a couple times. I got hurt like at 19. I got hurt again at 20. And motocross wasn't probably going to be how I was able to really, really pay the bills and make a living. So I was working construction, and then my dad and I bought a little accessory shop that I worked in. I was in moto, and I liked dirt bikes since I was a kid. I worked at the Honda dealer when I was like 15 till I graduated high school, and then tried racing. And like I said, got broke off a couple times and had a hard few years, and did all right, qualified for some nationals and whatnot, but that just it wasn't cut out. I wasn't cut out for that. Okay. And so, but being around moto, I always loved it. So my dad and I bought this shop, and it was like just accessories and used bikes, and we kind of put this shop together. And I ended up, since living here in Ohio, being a construction worker in the wintertime, you get laid off. So that's what the shop kind of was perfect. And when springtime came back around, they called me to go to work, and I was busy. Like I had bikes moving out that day, and I had parts and people, and like I was like that. So that was my thing for a while, and that was actually going pretty well back in the 90s. And I had an ad in Racer X at the time when it was still a newspaper, because I used to go to District 5 and race a lot over there. So I advertised my shop in there, and I got a phone call from the guys on the Warp Tour back when they were putting freestyle motocross on it for like the first year, which would have been, I think, 98. And it was right before freestyle was kind of a thing. It was right when the Crusty Demons of Dirt videos were huge, and like I would sell that stuff in my shop. I would have a video playing, and when people saw that video, they're like, "Oh, I need that too." And those things were real hot in the mid 90s.
Yes.
Moto Triple X, Krusties, all that stuff, and then so I got a call to go to be a sponsor on the Warp Tour, because they found me in the Racer X paper, and I'm like, hey, I'm just a little shop, but I would love to do that. And they're like, well, that'd be cool if you want to send us a video of you riding. And so I sent a video, and it took them a few days. And I was like, whatever, we'll see. Pretty long shot. And then they finally called and they said, hey, we sent your video on to Mickey Diamond. And I'm like, oh man, he's going to be like we need a kid from across the whole country to come do this, because he's in Southern California, and I think there's plenty of kids that would do that. But Mickey was impressed, and he was like, come on out, we'd like to have you. And I shipped my bike out there and shut my shop down for the summer. And after the Warped Tour, there were some contests that were starting, and that was right in the beginning of freestyle. So they're like, where are you shipping your bike to? And I shipped it to California and flew home, sold the shop, moved back out to California that fall, and just started chasing contests, and lived there till like 2000. Like, I had a place there till 14, but I was back here around 5 or 6. So I've chased that freestyle pretty hard, late 90s, early 2000s, till I broke my femur and blew my shoulder apart and turned 30 that week. So that was kind of and at that point it was the end of 03, I think. And there were kids just coming, and the backflip was started, and that was the end of the competition days for me around.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Story,
Getting there up there at that age, and you breaking those bones, and the recovery time comes a lot longer. You start contemplating on what you're doing, that's for sure. But I know back in your racing days, man, you actually kind of made a little bit of a name for yourself, because I was going through the internet yesterday, and I ran across some high flyer trading cards, and it had your picture and your name all on it. So if you were on those high flyer cards, man, I remember those as a kid, dude. I love to collect those things, and you were on there, so your presence was felt back then.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember the event from the picture. It was in Axton, Virginia. It was one of my better finishes. Like, I got, I think, like 22nd that day.
Okay.
Just
you were
no points.
So you were actually qualifying for the events back then as a pro.
Yeah, I could get in.
Okay. And when you made that transition over to freestyle, like before you even hit that Warped Tour, you were hitting ramps. How did you prepare yourself to even go on tour when you've actually never been on tour or hit any contest before?
I'd actually never hit a ramp, but I hit a lot of big jumps, and that's what I really liked about riding, was jumping. Since I was a kid, I liked hitting big jumps and making jumps, and I had a place to practice at where the guy he got a skid steer and had a unique piece of property, and he had a track that he got pretty excited about making some big jumps for me and a couple other guys that could do them. And so I was doing that just for fun right up until, I did make a little bit of money. I would go to some, like a fair race or something, where they'd have a little purse and they'd have a jump contest. And I remember a few times where I would make hundreds of dollars racing, and I made $1,000 or $1,500 winning the jump contest. So that was a pretty cool little, hey, this thing's getting traction type thing. In like the, probably 96, 97. And so I was hitting the jumps. The jumps and the gap was a little bit of a head game at first.
Mm-hmm.
With the, but I didn't really have a problem with.
What was actually going through your mind during your first freestyle ever competition? Is it something where you guys, when you hit the competition, you were hitting ramps by then, I take it, and it was something that you had to completely adjust to when you started hitting these ramps? Was a lot different? Did you make a lot of mistakes going into hitting ramps and entering contests at first?
I remember being pretty nervous. there were times, like, I'm trying to even think of where my first contest was. There was like, it was like Costa Mesa, or there was one in Tacoma, Washington, maybe. I'm not sure where the first, but they had some pretty cool courses back then. I do remember that, and they were, a lot of them were dirt, so it made it even harder actually. Once the ramps came into play, um, and especially once they were ramps that you'd hit before and knew, then it was real. It took a couple years for them to get ramps dialed in. There were
Okay.
a couple goofy ones in the beginning that kind of kicked you funny, um, but that didn't take long to sort out, and they had real good ramps, like, and I don't know. You kind of, just like, it was easier than racing. Racing is, you go to like a High Point or Axton, Virginia, where that um, High Flyer card was. Um, those tracks get gnarly, and you're jumping that stuff all day, and it just gets beaten worse. And you go from the good line to that's horrible, and now you have to go over here and still hit the thing. Um, Being in a controlled environment like a freestyle course, especially out there by yourself, um, I found that a lot easier. I like
Okay.
that part of that aspect about not being in an intense battle, even though it's judged and it's a competition. You're not in a dogfight for 35 minutes with some dude getting roosted.
Exactly. You were the you were the first factory paid freestyle rider. How did that factory deal come about, and how did it change some of your opportunities after that?
Um, so early on, kind of left out some of the stuff. When I had my shop, I was working with Pro Action Suspension, and I was still going racing a little bit because I
Oh,
just loved it. I wasn't trying to race um, all the nationals and that stuff, but I was maybe doing um, some amateur days and some bigger events, and mini O's and stuff like that. And we would go, and I was testing for Dirt Rider
okay.
magazine at the time a little bit, and a lot of stuff for Pro Action. But then I got to know those guys at Dirt Rider. They would let me come and help, test and use products, and be photo model, whatever. Just go jump that jump, 60 times, and Ken Fott would take pictures from every angle and make sure he got the shot so they could go back and put it in a magazine. And so that was good practice. And where was I going? What was the original question? I went on a tangent there.
It was just how did the factory deal come up? How did the factory
Oh,
Yamaha
oh,
deal come apart, and how did the opportunities for you?
yeah. Duh. So, sorry. So the magazine testing, I had gotten to know some people at Yamaha and some people at Honda, and I actually had talks with people from Honda. Um, and then I had one bike at the time, and I was shipping it away to be at a contest. So I was borrowing bikes or going riding with Dirt Rider and those guys just to be able to ride something. Um, I've got to. I knew they were sending bikes back to Yamaha at the end of the year, and I knew Terry Beal at Yamaha, and I said, "Hey Terry, what's the chance? Can I get one of them bikes or something like that?" And again, I went with no communication for a week or so, and was kind of hoping I could put something together, just to borrow like a bike that they loaned to the magazines. And next thing I know, we're in talks to just give me a deal,
Hmm.
because we knew they saw what was happening. Actually, Terry was a judge, I think, a couple times maybe at some early freestyle contests, and um, by then it was X Games and Gravity Games, and we were getting on television, and the sport was becoming pretty popular. And so, why wouldn't they? And me asking, and then it was a good fit. They thought for a couple of years until, and I was a Yamaha rider for 3 years, so that was awesome. And but when I broke my femur and blew my shoulder apart and all that stuff, it took all the that no fear attitude, that just roll the dice as hard as you can, uh, mentality that you have to take to that level of an event, and just kind of squashed it. I healed, and I never really healed mentally, and to try to go and compete against, the new kids coming up, and they still had that mentality because they didn't get bounced off the ground a few times, and whatever reason, some kids do get bounced off the ground and come back from it. And it wasn't my first time hitting the ground. I got a laundry list of broken bones, but that one set me down, and things changed. But it was a fortunate gig that I fell into with the Yamaha thing, from a few variables. The culmination of the sport at the time, the magazine deal, Dirt Rider, and Pro Action guys, and
Okay. Now
they were great people. It was awesome to work with them.
Now they were giving you bikes, but were they actually paying for your room and board? Were they paying for flights? Were they getting you to these events like they would a motocross guy, or was it? How were they treating you as a freestyle rider?
Yeah, big bikes and parts, and then I got a salary, and I took care of my own. Sometimes travel. It just depended on where I was going for who, but the salary was for that. If I went to their events, I went to a few events for Yamaha, and they always took care of travel, of course, and hotels at those. But a lot of times it was taken care of in other ways. And so, yeah, I got a salary and bikes, all the parts, whatever you needed.
Okay, now when you were with Yamaha for the 3 years, were you able to bring in outside sponsors, or did they already have their own sponsors set for you? Because a lot of the freestyle guys back then didn't have factory rides, and they were bringing all these outside sponsors to be able to get paid and endorse the product. But what was your standpoint on that when you were riding for Yamaha?
Yeah, I actually had a Sobe deal at the time. Sobe Beverages. I don't know if you remember that company.
Oh yeah.
I was doing those big body panels on a YZ250 too. Yamaha kind of dug that. They wanted their logo on there big, and Sobe had their logo on there real big. And so we had, and of course they were advertising. They were advertising in magazines like Maxim and stuff, putting, jumping over their school bus, doing a handstand, and
Mm-hmm.
so it was outside of the industry kind of marketing, which I think Yamaha dug that.
Okay.
That was cool for the sport.
Okay. Were you able to profit from having a factory sponsor? I mean, and having a salary, because I'm sure it was still like a niche where to make money to live off of, you still had to grind and do all these events to be able to put a little bit of extra cash in your pocket.
Yeah, there was like those 3 years, with the other deals I had. Yeah, I remember there was a few years right when it was good, where I was making about $100,000 a year before I started my bike, and then I'd go and then yeah, it took sometimes a little bit to, but I saved some money, and I made some. I bought a house in California, like. It was different than what racing would have been,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, there were a couple years when, I got salary from Sobe and Yamaha and like 5 or 6 other companies, and a lot of all the free product I could use. And then the contests were paying pretty well, and if you could do well and do a lot of them, I just wanted to ride. I just wanted to as much as I could up until that incident. But I was doing 50 events a year.
Oh wow.
And sometimes they're Friday and Saturday nights, so that's 2. But there'd be a Wednesday night. I remember the Mark Burnett tour. We'd travel around in like campers with the ramps and stuff, or some of those were mostly dirt, I think. But yeah, they had some ramps. But we would be in Montana, Kalispell, Montana on a Wednesday, and somewhere else in Idaho on Thursday, and then be at somewhere Tacoma, Washington, Friday and Saturday for IFMA events. And,
Okay.
And there was 10 of us traveling around that were doing that together, and you could make some money, like And again, we were just doing it back then to do it. We weren't trying to count and see, and it was just like yes to everything.
Oh yeah.
You know, I had to say no to a lot of things because I couldn't be in two places at once. But there was a lot of freestyle happening back then. Uh,
Mm.
it was blowing up, and you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Freestyle definitely came a long way. I personally, I love freestyle, and when it came in, I was on those crusty demons of dirt. I had a buddy, you may even know him, Jake Turtle Whitecoff. He was big on freestyle and racing back in the days. Rest in peace to him. But as the sport evolved, man, it's the guys have really stepped the bar up on these tricks.
yeah,
Like, if you were to look back, like, do you feel like you're glad you put your footprint in it during that time period? And where do you actually see the sport evolving from where it is now?
yeah, it was good. It felt like we were progressing pretty fast, but you know, that stuff was all nothing compared to now. Um, I I don't want to be negative at all, but and maybe I'll ask you this question, and it's still evolving. I did it peak with Tom Pages?
Hmm. I don't think so.
Okay, I mean, yeah, there's still more to do. It is beginning to get to the point like a skateboard trick where if you don't even slow it down, you can't even tell what they did. Like
Yeah.
some BMX tricks got to that. You know, it started like I was a big BMX fan back in the day. And, those tricks you could see them, and then it got to where you're like, I don't even know what he just did until you
Yeah. Right.
wow, that's amazing. And freestyle's getting there. It's it's you know, um, so dangerous, obviously, that I think it's the progression's been slowed a little by.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. With these younger kids, man, in these younger generations, like, it's all about show and tell now. You know, who can do the biggest shit, who can do the best shit, who can flip this many, and it's like once these guys step that bar up, you may think that's as far as you're gonna go, but then somebody's gonna go up and step it up another notch and go further than you and take it, and it just keeps evolving. When you don't think there's some a trick that can be done, it gets pulled off. You know,
Yeah, these kids doing everything upside down now. Crazy.
yeah, triple
But like,
backs and quads, and I'm just
yeah,
like, dude, that's ridiculous.
yeah, yeah,
So you broke your femur. You had a few injuries, man. And you were getting up there in age. Is that what led to TV Land? How did TV Land come about?
yep. I found this piece of property when I'm, you know, in those travels and purchased it. Wasn't going to do anything with it for a while. Just figured, you know, in time I would um, develop it into hopefully a track or something. You know, that was the plan.
Hmm.
And then when I got hurt, that I did a lot of my rehab back here and just kind of start that ball rolling a little sooner. And then the next few years, I had some races back here, and yep, started growing it, and it started doing well enough that you know, it's making some money, and I can reinvest in it and buy some equipment and do some more, build this. And I've got 4 tracks here now, 2 kids tracks, the main track, and then like a vet track, 4 ramps, and a little freestyle area. You know, it's a little bit of woods loop.
Yeah, I see. What is that? A shop? You got a shop at the spot where you're a distributor? I mean,
Nah, this is just my stuff here. Let's
okay,
see.
that's personal stuff, or
Yeah, I ride this bike a lot. This is Yamaha Super Tenere,
yep, yep.
uh, YZ450, YZ250.
Still rocking the 145. Yep,
Yep,
got a Harley there.
got a Harley here. Let me see. I'll take you on a little.
Give me a little personal shop tour. I'm loving it.